and welcome to Round Robin. I'm your host, Robin McCormick with the City of Hampton, and today we are going to meet a local author who has written technically his first novel, but he's had some short stories published also, and one of the central characters is Hampton. Welcome, Hugh Lessig. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
This is, you were a reporter for, a while, right? Mm-hmm. At the Daily Press, and you worked somewhere before that even, didn't you?
Yeah, I worked at 2 newspapers in my native state of Pennsylvania before I came to the Daily Press in '97, and my first beat was Hampton City Hall.
I had forgotten that. Yeah. I should have remembered. I don't know what position I was in at the Daily Press at the time, because I moved around into features and some other stuff. But so, what had you always wanted to write? Write fiction, or is this something that's come up later in your life?
I think a lot of reporters are frustrated novelists and frustrated fiction writers. And
I majored in creative writing and haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah, we all think we have a novel in us. I actually wrote 2 novels that are in the drawer, which is not all that uncommon before this one finally made it. So this is technically my debut novel, but I've been at this for a little while.
Yeah. Well, it takes a while to get good at it. It took a while to get good at being a reporter.
It does.
Kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
So tell us, it's called Fade Away Joe, and give us some, don't give away anything, but some ideas about what the story is.
Well, this is a crime novel. It primarily takes place in Hampton. The central character is named Joe Pendergast. He is an aging, for lack of a better word, professional tough guy. He works for a man in Norfolk who runs a bar and does illegal gambling in the back room and is kind of a loan shark, just sort of a small-time hood. Joe's worked for this man for 40 years, being a bouncer, knocking on doors to collect debts. He's, think Clint Eastwood in his 60s. I mean, he's that kind of guy, just a hard as nails kind of person. What happens is he contracts early-stage dementia. He's diagnosed. And his boss, who is not exactly a caring nurturer, cuts him loose. He's abandoned. So when the story begins, Joe has moved back to near where he grew up in Phoebus. He has a food truck where he's sort of eking out a living. But what he's really doing, he wants revenge against his boss. He just feels bitter and abandoned that he's been cut loose. His boss was the older brother he never had. He fixed his drinks, he got his dry cleaning, he did everything for him, and now they're gone. Now they're separate. So early in the story, and without giving too much away, he runs into a young woman who herself is homeless, is on the run from labor traffickers, and needs protection. She's being pursued by bad guys. Joe can offer her the kind of protection that she needs. Even though he's, with his diagnosis, he's still kind of a tough guy. You don't want to mess with him. She, in the meanwhile, because she's kind of looked into criminal enterprises, she's kind of street smart and savvy and has an idea of how Joe can get back at his boss financially without Joe's strategy would be just to go in with guns blazing and use my fists, and because that's how he thinks.
Beat him up, yeah.
Yeah, and she's smarter than that. So they kind of depend on each other. They have this symbiotic relationship, and it's an uneasy alliance. But so as the story progresses, it's about that relationship and how they help each other. But with Joe, it also becomes about kind of the choices you make when you know your time is running out. When you have that clock ticking in your head, and he's looking back on the choices he's made, not very good ones, and thinking of how he wants to be remembered. And maybe he thinks what I want to be remembered for is helping this young woman get back on her feet, as opposed to me exacting my pound of flesh, before I leave this earth. So it's really about sort of end of life decisions of a guy who's has more than a few regrets as maybe trying to make things right.
That's interesting on a lot of levels. So a lot of, crime novels are about the crime or whatever, and not so much have the depth and perception and the sort of, here's the other issues, homelessness, here's the other issues, figuring out how I want to be known or what's going to happen to me with this diagnosis. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's... Joe grew up in Hampton. He grew up actually in the Buckroe Beach area. His parents had a corner grocery store. What I enjoyed a lot about this book was folding in some of the history of Hampton to it. He He is old enough to remember the Mercury astronauts when they were here, and how Hampton had kind of adopted them until they left us.
Mercury Boulevard, Spacetown, all that.
Yeah. So he knows that. He can remember, obviously the amusement park in Buckroe. He could never go there because he was always working at his parents' store. But it was like this, this thing that he,
He must have looked at frequently.
Sure, and heard the noises, heard the roller coaster and whatnot. And then, there's some of the darker periods in Hampton. Joe was a child in the 60s.
Right, would have been segregation.
He remembers all of that. He remembers segregation. And, as a reporter in Hampton, you end up talking to a lot of people. And the people in Hampton are so great to talk to. And they're so honest with you. And I remember talking to residents about those days, and I was able to fold some of the memories I had into the story. And if you want if you really want an in-depth look, go to the Hampton History Museum and check out their oral histories.
It's amazing.
It really is amazing. They reinforced a lot of what I heard from these residents. And the overt segregation was bad enough, but they will tell you like little things, like if I'm a black person, I go into a store and the clerk is white, and I buy something and she gives me change, they made sure that their palm, they never touched my hand. They would drop the coins into my palm from a distance. Little things like that just really stuck with me. And Joe remembers all that. Joe is white, so he's, but he, when he was a kid, he had a crush on a black girl when he was 14 years old. So he's working through that. Paula, who he meets, is biracial. So they both like push each other out of their comfort zones, because she has nothing in common with an old grumpy white guy, and he has nothing in common with this young kind of wisecracking woman who he never had kids, so he really can't relate to younger people. So they really form this uneasy alliance, and they kind of grow together as they try to help each other.
So does this come to you as like one whole story, or do you start with a piece and then things develop?
I actually got this idea when I wrote a piece of flash fiction. Flash fiction is like 700 words for a website, and it was about an older man on death row and a younger criminal he's mentoring. And I just got the idea of how the generations communicate. I think as I worked at the newspaper, and got older and older and older, and I became that person who kind of looked over their glasses at the younger folks.
Because that's size newspaper. We hire people who are right out of college or 2 years out.
Yeah. But what was so great about it was that the younger reporters, especially later in my career, taught me so much about technology and how to work faster and how to work savvier. And so I really got into how could I write a novel, a crime novel, but that communicates across the generations. And in this case, a criminal, a younger person who may turn out to be a criminal. She's homeless, she's savvy, but she's kind of on the edge. How is she going to go? She's at a crossroads. Does he help her? Does he not? Does he go his own way? So yeah, there's a lot there. And I picked, I dovetailed dementia into it because my father passed away from dementia.
Oh.
And I got to see sort of that long, slow slide that if you have someone who has dementia, you kind of see that, and it's very painful to watch.
Oh, it's awful.
Especially from someone, my dad was a truck driver. He was a physically powerful person, and to see what that does. I think there's probably a little bit of that in this story too. How a tough guy who's never gone to the doctor, who's never been sick a day in his life, can just be, floored by this disease.
Mm-hmm. Comes out of nowhere almost.
Yeah.
Well, this book is about to be published. What's your date?
It releases August 22nd. It's published by Crooked Lane Books. I'll be doing a book signing at Dog-Eared Books in downtown Hampton on September 16th. But it's available now. You can go to my website, HughLessig.com. It's on my Facebook page. You can look it up on Amazon, all the usual channels. It's there.
That's great. And I hope you do some more book signings too. Maybe the larger bookstores will jump on it. But I love that you're starting with Dog-Eared Books. She's wonderful.
She is. That's my favorite bookstore. We go in there and we can just spend hours just looking at the shelves.
What have I forgotten to ask you?
I can't think of anything other than I was so happy to take my experience as a reporter and kind of fold it into this book. It's amazing the things you pick up gathering the news that you later in life you come back on. So, for instance, Paula is homeless. I got to interview a bunch of homeless veterans in Hampton because the Hampton VA Medical Center has done such a good job placing homeless veterans in housing.
That took a long time, though.
It did. And, you always think, this is my own shortcoming, I always thought of homeless people as that person down at the end of the exit ramp holding the sign. And these people, they have work histories, they have relationships, they have things going on in their lives, and it's kind of scary how they can become homeless because just 2 or 3 things can happen,
right?
And the dominoes can fall, and all of a sudden, you're couch surfing, or your bills need to be paid, and they're turning off the lights. It's not that difficult for people to end up in that situation. So I really enjoyed kind of putting that into the story too.
And we're lucky that it's about Hampton. I love reading books that evoke a place that I know. So I'm very excited. I can't wait to read it.
Yeah, I really, I thought about putting like real businesses in the story. I thought, I probably better not do that. But there is a fictional bar in this story in Phoebus that if you know Phoebus, you'll know where it is. It's down where the boat launch is, in that open area. It's called the Moonbeam Brewery, started by a bunch of retired NASA Langley engineers. But that's there's a scene at Fort Monroe. There's a bunch of scenes in Phoebus. There's a scene in downtown Newport News. But there's no real businesses yet. So once I get more established, I can approach some businesses and say, you want to be in my book?
Hey, that's cool. Well, I can't wait. So we'll get a look at it in just a few weeks, actually. So that's very exciting. Well, thank you for coming by, Hugh. I'm a little bit jealous that you've written the book and I haven't, but I'm excited to read it.
There's time.
And I am very excited to read it, and I hope you are too. It is wonderful when the setting is the place that you live, the place that you know, and people who are real to you, even if they're not real. So thank you for watching, and check out the book.